Hello, this is Nikki Kyohoho, CEO and co-founder of the DSWA. This is one of our executive forum calls where we provide information and content for all of you corporate executives that are looking at growing your direct selling businesses. Today on the line with me is Jeffrey A. Babner out of Portland, Oregon. He is the principal attorney in the law firm of Babner and Associates, and he's been for more than 30 years advising leading U.S. and foreign companies in the direct selling profession, including many members of the Direct Selling Association and the DSWA. He has lectured and published extensively on direct selling, and many of his writings will be found at www.mlmlegal.com, mlmlegal.com. Write that down because there's a great deal of content that will support you in your success in building your businesses. Jeff is a graduate of the University of Southern California Law School, where he was an editor of the USC Law Review. Post-USC Law, he served a one-year term appointment as a law clerk to the Honorable David W. Williams, U.S. District Court, Central District of California. Mr. Babner is an active member of the state bars in both California and in Oregon. Jeff is a long-recognized legal specialist in the field of direct selling. Again, for the past 30 years, he has advised many of the world's leading direct selling companies. For instance, he is currently strategic legal advisor to two New York Stock Exchange direct selling companies, Avon and Herbalife, and he was involved in the formative stages and advisory of two other New York Stock Exchange direct selling companies, and that would be Nu Skin and USANA. Jeff is a senior member of the Lawyers Council and Government Relations Committee for the DSA. He has published extensively and lectured at multiple universities on the subject, as well as having chaired approximately 70 national conferences on direct selling. He has tried cases on direct selling throughout the United States. And again, you will find further background material on direct selling at his website of mlmlegal.com, where he is the editor. Well, today our subject is pretty exciting because we want to make sure that you are hearing the latest of what's going on in the legal side of the business. So we're calling this Legal Hotspots for direct selling companies. So, Jeff, I'd like to ask you a few questions, but first I just want to welcome you to be part of what we're doing today.
Thank you, Nikki. It's really a pleasure to be with you. You know, I'm sure you do know, we are an active member of the DSWA and one of its most ardent supporters, and I'm one of the most ardent supporters of you yourself. So this is a real pleasure.
After knowing you for at least 20 years, I've watched what you've done, and I know you know this information. So it is exciting for me to learn from you as well as to have our listeners learn. So here's some questions to ponder. What challenges are coming across your desk today that maybe weren't there 3 years ago in the direct selling world?
Well, Nikki, in a way I often have to have a longer-term perspective because we go back 3 decades. And, of course, some things changed as well as during the downturn of the economy, some opportunities and some challenges. But in this last few-year period, we've seen several trends, and they have presented some challenges and they presented opportunities. For instance, in the opportunities arena, we have seen an explosion in the area of party plan. And companies that we represent and other companies we know are doing very, very well. As a matter of fact, we saw the public recognition of the industry really took a major leap. I think it was during the 2009 Super Bowl when Avon was a primary sponsor, and Jennifer Hudson sang the national anthem, and the advertisement on the Super Bowl was for the Avon opportunity, not even for the product, which was really a message to America of this industry has something to offer folks. So that's been a real plus. In addition, companies have done very well with the internet and social media of expanding abroad. So we have a lot of international activity. From the challenge standpoint, I would say the industry has to cope with new technologies, number one, and that is companies have to recognize all of the creative power of Facebook, Twitter, and all of the other social media opportunities, and they have to search for some balance between giving their distributors the ability to be creative and get the word out, and yet protecting their brand, protecting their own status in search engines, protecting against inappropriate claims, whether they're medical claims, earnings claims. And so this has been a challenge of reaching a happy medium in terms of how distributors basically work with social media and also giving good tools to distributors. The other challenge we've seen has been with all of the interest in direct selling. We have seen many new companies, and we have sometimes seen a tension, unfortunately, one that we don't want to see, and that's between distributors and the companies themselves. We have some distributors who are only too willing to jump ship, go from one company to another, raid distributors, and it really is quite undermining to the opportunity of all of those that they've left behind. On the other hand, we've seen companies who have been overreaching and they've been bullying with their distributors and telling them what they can do, what they can't do. And there's a dialogue that we're going to have in the industry to figure out what is a good meeting ground in terms of controls that companies can have over what their distributors can do and what are reasonable expectations of distributors. And finally, I'd say we've all seen some issues in the financial markets in the last few years regarding in the last couple of years regarding direct selling, and it has raised the issue of what is the viability, the legality of our industry itself. We come off a period of maybe 20 years of very positive publicity, and now we have, in particular, we have some folks coming from the hedge fund arena who are pointing fingers at the industry and urging more regulation. And the image of the industry and what we stand for and the opportunity, this is one that the industry, groups like the DSWA, the DSA, and others all are trying to cope with at this time, because there's a lot of news articles going on, and of course we're seeing all of these.
There's a lot happening out there that in some instances we say, we don't have any control over that, I'm just going to put my nose down and go to work, but yet we all contribute to that by not defending our profession but educating the public so that there's a better understanding. And I believe you're right. Internet has shifted a lot of the way things happen. The social media has stepped in there. Lack of awareness or inaccurate information, all of that has affected us, which of course affects the whole legal part of with the company. The other thing interesting,
Nikki, we're big believers in education, and so at our website at mlmlegal.com, you'll just see we posted about 60 short videos, educational videos on the industry, tons of articles. I think that it is a role that a group like yours, a group like us, plays in terms of educating the public. And I'm sure articles that are posted at your website, our website, are frequently picked up by the press, and they're not intended to be necessarily cheerleaders. They're not intended necessarily to be adversary articles. They're intended to educate the public about what's good about the industry and what are some of those things that we really need to take stock of and work on.
Very well said. There are a lot of regulatory things that have been coming up over the last several years. What do you think are the regulatory changes that are most affecting direct selling companies?
Well, in general, they have been positive, the regulatory issues, because the industry itself has, for the most part, during the last 20 years, developed a good working relationship with attorneys general, FTC, etc. There was a period of time when, back in the 1970s, when our own FTC challenged our industry as being basically one big pyramid scheme, and because of they actually chased after Amway, challenging whether or not it was legitimate, and Amway prevailed in a very famous case in 1979 in which it was held that our business is a legitimate business opportunity and not a pyramid scheme. And things went dormant and quiet for about 20 years. And then in the 1990s, issues resurfaced as to whether or not companies whose distributors use the product, whether or not they should be viewed as a legitimate end destination for product just as retail customers. And there has been a tug and pull between our own FTC and the industry on this point in terms of determining whether or not personal use should have an impact on whether or not a company is legitimate or a pyramid scheme. So much so that the industry, with the cooperation of many attorney generals in more than a dozen states, were able to amend legislation in those states to specifically call out and recognize that personal use of product by distributors is a legitimate end destination as if it were a retail sale. Most recently, about 3 or 4 years ago, the FTC decided it was time to update its business opportunity rule. And its initial drafting of the rule, of its business opportunity rule, which is really oriented to programs that are closer to franchises or where there are substantial investments. The proposed rules basically would have encompassed direct selling companies to the point that it would have been very onerous to offer an MLM, direct selling network marketing opportunity in the marketplace. For instance, one of the proposed rules would have provided that if you talk to your neighbor about joining your direct selling opportunity, you then would have to wait for a week before you could go back to them and ask them, would you be interested? You can imagine as somebody who comes out of this business that waiting a week is not very conducive to offering a business opportunity to a friend. In any event, the industry itself, from the direct selling, the DSWA, the DSA, the MLMIA, the distributor associations, and 17,000 people wrote comments to the FTC, basically indicating that they thought this was really overreaching. The net result was the FTC actually amended its proposed rule and carved out an exception that direct selling companies and MLM would not be included in the rule. And this was a real victory for the industry, because it's not that the industry isn't interested in consumer protection. It just did not want such onerous rules that would get in the way of people doing a legitimate business, and one that's involved in right now by, more than 15, 16 million people, in the United States. So that was the most recent encounter we had with regulatory agencies. I would say, by and large, we're in a fairly good regulatory environment. Every MLM, direct selling network marketing company, any one time, though, is always being sent questions of inquiry from regulatory agencies, FTC, AGs, or others, consumer protection agencies. This is just part of doing business. So sometimes when you see that somebody has been sent inquiries or investigative demands from agencies, I wouldn't jump to conclusions that this is necessarily going to be a major problem. They're doing their job.
Good point. When that whole business opportunity piece came out and that was all being debated, the DSWA got very involved in that and helped to put sample letters up and hosted a call actually with the DSA and did everything that we could because we understood it was going to massively affect the field and the results of where things were going. So we were so happy when they realized that, whoa, this is not where you want to go with this. That was a good thing. We also became involved with the toy things, when they were coming down with all the regulations for the toy companies. And, sometimes they just don't know. I think they have their view of things, but they don't have the view of the people that are actually have their feet on the ground doing the business. So we appreciate all the support you do on working on those things and the groups that you're involved in.
In the end, there's a balance to be reached.
Yes.
And the industry always does its best, and companies do their best when they take some of their own initiatives to basically promote consumer protection and looking out for both consumers and distributors themselves. And that always serves us well. And I think that's probably the reason that the FTC basically ratcheted back on that business opportunity rule. We wrote comment letters, and actually I think some of the letters we wrote were cited several times in the staff opinion when the ultimate rule came out. And your work was well known at the time. You did a great job, and organizations like the DSWA have the ability to mobilize large groups of folks who are passionate about what they're doing, and so that's why you serve such a great purpose.
Thank you so much. So here is the hot topic out there that everyone is talking about. It's all about social media. Companies don't know where to go, what to do. The field is not sure what the boundaries are. So from a legal perspective, what do you think is the future of social media indirect sales?
I think it's great. I think it's you can't turn back the clock, and it's been a long time since you or I have used an 8-track player.
Thank goodness.
a physical typewriter, a CD player. We can't turn back time. These are tools. These are wonderful tools. This is a work in progress. Every company that is serious out there in direct selling is trying to figure out what is the best way that we can work with our distributors to let them use the Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and all the other tools that are out there. I myself, and I'd say if you went to every company, everybody is trying to develop their do's and don'ts of both protocol for how to be on the web. Some companies long ago decided it really was not in their interest and it was not compatible with direct selling, for instance, to have their distributors offering their products at websites like eBay or shopping malls, because this is a person-to-person sales business, and most companies feel like you're undermining the proprietary nature of what you're giving your distributors if mass merchandising or in stores is brought into play. But in terms of the social networking, these are communication tools. Now, it's a legitimate question, and I know, Nikki, you're out there and would know this much better than me. The legitimate question as to whether or not this is a true recruiting tool or it is a communications tool. I think to the extent that it's anonymous and it's just out there in a way that is not personal, I have some real suspicion as to its value as how to build your business, because I think that there's no substitute for relationships in our business. And of course, if this can help build relationships, I think it's great. But I don't think it's the answer to, hello, all you need to do is sign up with our company and open up Facebook, and all of a sudden you're going to have a large sales organization. I don't think that's how it's going to work, but I do think it's a magnificent way to stay in touch with everyone. We do have an issue, and it's quite a legitimate issue that the industry is trying to grapple with, and that is folks have Facebook pages, and they have friends, and their friends may be their family friends and their work friends, but they may also be their people they know in their direct selling company. And one of the problems that we're grappling with is when somebody leaves a direct selling company and moves to another company, and they start promoting the second company on their Facebook to the people who are in their organization from the previous company, is that rating? And the end of the story is not yet written on this point. It's very difficult because most companies, they do ask their distributors, please, if you want to do another company, please go do it, but please don't raid our sales organization because you're damaging the livelihood of all of those people you're leaving behind. And so we're working our way through this. We don't have the answer yet, and there's even a conflicting case authority. The legal case authority says, no, when you're on Facebook and you announce that you're going to another company, that is a little bit like freedom of expression and protected by First Amendment, and a company should not be able to accuse you of raiding. Other courts and cases have suggested that maybe you should carve out those lists of people who've been in your downline from your Facebook, because in reality, if you think about Facebook, in a way it's a sophisticated way of sending emails, because every time you make a posting, it's as if you're sending an email, to 100 people. And so if you think of it that way, you have to figure out whether or not there's a conflict in terms of what you're doing. So this is a work in progress, Nikki.
So there's not been a case won or lost on this subject yet? There's
cases both ways that have ruled both ways on this subject, that it's okay, it's not okay. Because a company would come forward and basically say, you know what, when you do this, you're targeting. And there's been at least one case that has basically said, no, this is Facebook, and the fact that these people are in the Facebook address book, it doesn't make any difference. So we don't have the end of the story. Somewhere there will be appellate cases, and there will be some resolution at an appellate level. Most companies would not hesitate today to basically ask their people to not promote to folks on their Facebook page who've been with their who've been in their downline, and many distributors would think otherwise. So
you are right on this one, Jeff, because we're hearing this as we're out with people, and as somebody leaves, they think, well, these are my Facebook friends. They're not the friends of the company. But many times a very influential leader, a top leader, people want to be friends with them on Facebook, so they join that to stay in the loop of what they're doing in the business. Then all of a sudden they go to another business. And I've heard both sides of the story and how that works, but my guess is something is going to happen, and it will be the deciding factor, as you say. I want to ask you, though, can companies put anything in their policies and procedures that would give them any further protection in this area?
Well, most companies basically provide that distributors, clearly while they are distributors, they ask them not to be involved in raiding activity. Companies are mixed in terms of post-termination, whether or not many companies today ask for some period of time, we would ask you not to raid our downline. And the position of those companies is basically that your Facebook address, your address book, is basically an email list. And when you do a posting, it's no different than if you're doing basically a mass email. And so companies position, usually you don't see anything in company policy specifically about this is what you can or can't do post-termination with Facebook, but with many companies their position is it's effectively the same as if you started sending emails to all of the people who were in your who are in your downline. And we've been involved in a number of these situations in which we've ended up with agreements between companies and distributors to somehow bifurcate out basically folks who were in your sales organization, so that you had a normal Facebook page, and maybe then you had a Facebook page that that related to people who were in your downline. It's very difficult because as you know, you're a people person, and good portion of the time, perhaps your closest friends, either they were your closest friends before you got them to get into the organization, or after you met them in the organization, they became one of your closest friends. So this is it's a bit of a dilemma. The companies look at it much more black and white. They tend to see it basically as you have a lengthy address list, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook, and it's like emails. And when you send out an announcement, say, "Come join me in the new company," it's as if you just sent out a mass email to your downline. So I know that's how companies look at it, and I understand from the distributor standpoint as well how it may be viewed to the contrary. And we're not at the end of this story.
No, I have a feeling it's going to go on for quite a while, and there'll probably be several cases that we'll go through till we get there. The last thing I'm going to ask around this is, sometimes in some companies they have that you can't, recruit whatever. Sometimes they say you can't recruit people that you didn't personally sponsor, but if you personally sponsored them, those are your friends and family, and those are people that you can take with you. What's your take around that?
Well, we've seen a radical shift in the last 20 years in terms of the policies. Historically, for instance, if you looked at the Amway policies, Amway was early in the game. Historically, the policies would have provided that, if you're with Amway, then don't offer an opportunity to somebody unless they are somebody you personally sponsored, and that was about it, because you knew them. That's how it was 20 years ago. Over time, particularly with communication, with we're connected everywhere. With the growth of the industry, first we saw a migration in policies to, while you're with our company, do not be rating anybody in your organization, period. Then we saw it morph to, when you leave our company, don't be sponsoring somebody except somebody you personally sponsored into another company. Then we saw one further variation, which was, when you leave our company, don't be rating anybody in our organization to a new company. And then, in just a few instances, we have seen companies provide for non-compete agreements, which I don't believe is fair in any way, and non-competes are not even enforceable as a matter of policy in the state of California. But we've seen some companies basically say, if you leave our company, you may not engage in any direct selling activity for a period of time. Almost all states frown on non-compete agreements because they get in the way of somebody conducting their livelihood. And we never put something like that in. But we do see non-competes. And if you take a look at a company who, going all the way back 20 years ago, let's say like Amway, you will see this sort of morphing that has come along all the way to, it's gone pretty far in terms of restrictions. So I'd say today that the most common clauses that we see companies adopt basically say, you know what, most companies have moved away from the concept of don't don't sponsor anybody other than somebody you've personally sponsored. Most companies have moved away from that and have basically said, during the time you're with us, we would ask you not to raid somebody in your sales organization, whether you personally sponsored them or not, to somewhere else. And many companies, perhaps the majority today, might say, for a period of time, 6 months, a year, we don't want you to raid people from the organization to another organization. And also a few companies today, and this tends to be more in the party plan arena, a few companies today, almost all companies have historically said, you know, if you're in our company and you want to do another direct selling MLM network marketing company, be our guest. Just don't raid our people, but go ahead and do it. We've seen in some of the party plan companies, let's say if you're selling jewelry, we've seen them specific to the type of product they're in. They may say, you know what, we feel that the product that we're offering is so identified with our opportunity, we don't want you, we don't want you while you are with us to be doing another jewelry direct selling company. So we do see that, and I think I understand that point. But that's I'd say that's rarer, but we definitely see it, and I understand the rationale there. Sorry for kind of going on and on there.
No, that's okay, because it makes sense. I want to ask, though, the language that you use is we don't want you to, we'd like you not to, we ask that you don't. What can you do about it if they do?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was being too polite.
You were being very thoughtful and considerate, yes. And especially thinking about the field too.
Yes, I've been a trial lawyer for a long time, and that's not how it is written. It is always written in a little more legalese, which is during the term of the agreement, you know, and for a year thereafter, a distributor agrees that the distributor, you know, will not raid. It doesn't say we would like you to, please don't. Companies, no, companies don't go that way. And then basically when it happens, as a practical matter, if a distributor is basically, this is a practical matter, not the legal matter. If a distributor is really someone who is affecting the entire franchise of the company, that is, it's really having a major impact, a company will not hesitate to file suit and to seek an injunction against that distributor. It's pretty rare, I'm not saying this is the same legal issue, if a distributor who basically has a rather minor business and a very limited organization and is located way down in the bowels of the direct selling company genealogy, it'd be very rare to see companies chase after those sorts of distributors. This is usually reserved for somebody has decided this is going to be a major raid, and effectively we want to take a good chunk of the business away from this other company. And it's usually, and there's often, in that situation, it's often a bad faith situation by the distributor themselves. That is, it's calculated, and you have to look at it and say, you know what, this isn't right either.
So it's making a decision of what you're going to do with it, and understanding it's an expensive endeavor to go after that, because it could go on and on and on legally. So
yes, and we're involved at any one time. We only represent companies. But we are at any one time. We're involved in that, in making those decisions. We're involved in that sort of litigation. And, as somebody who represents companies, we also have to be aware that when distributors come to the companies we represent, the same issue may be on the table. There's a funny story that one of our colleagues used to tell at conferences. He'd ask the audience, he'd say, how many of you here who are starting a company would like to have MLM professionals versus MLM junkies in your company? And, of course, everybody would raise their hand and say, we want MLM professionals. And nobody wanted MLM junkies. And he said, and he would say, well, sometimes it's two sides of a coin. And maybe you ought to think of it this way. An MLM professional, of course, or an MLM junkie is somebody you don't want around your company, because that's somebody who will raid your distributors and take them to another company. You do not want those sorts of folks. On the other hand, an MLM professional is somebody who basically leaves their company, raids all the distributors, and brings them to your company. You're looking for those sort of folks. So it just depends on what hat you're wearing on that day as to what is a professional and what's a junkie.
Good point. And the one that kills me is when they pay people to bring their people with them, and then they say they're going to bring thousands, and they bring 2, but they still get their money.
Yes, we see that. I think you've been around long enough to know that strategy is not a good strategy.
Not a good strategy for any company. One other question around all this, because we keep going back to the policies and procedures, and I know most companies, when they start, they get their policies and procedures written and so on, but many of them haven't looked at them in 15 years. How often should a company have their policies gone through to make sure that they're effective for today's marketplace?
I'd say most of our clients are constantly, and we've represented everybody from Avon to Herbalife, from Niken to Team National, from Yasana to Arbonne. So we definitely have been in the trenches here. Most companies are constantly taking a look at these issues. I'd say the 2 issues that 2 or 3 issues that they've had to basically take a close look at lately in the last few years are, one, basically social networking, and that is, how do you come up with a good good positive protocol for what should people do in terms of social networking. Another is basically this issue of the frequent migration of distributors between companies. So companies are constantly visiting, how far do we go in terms of trying to protect the interests of both the company and protect the livelihood of all of the distributors to whom we owe a duty to protect their livelihood, and yet not be a bully. So those issues are constantly under review. I'd say most companies that we've worked with have had to look at those multiple times. As they say with you try not to make frequent changes in certainly you try to not make frequent changes in a compensation plan, because you're undermining the faith in what the company's offering folks. And if you can, you try to limit those changes in the basic agreements and underpinnings of the relationship. You try to limit them, and you definitely should try to be able to explain the rationale for what you're doing. It should, as a general matter, it should not. The companies who basically say we're partners with our distributors really need to walk that talk, and they need to be able to say, we're doing this because we think we owe a duty not just to protect the company, but we owe a duty to protect consumers, and we owe a duty to protect the livelihoods of thousands or millions of people who basically bet their life on us, because that is really what happens when some of these things disassemble. All of a sudden, people who basically have spent all of their time building organizations and find them stolen and taken elsewhere, they are hurt. They're hurt dramatically, and there is something that's not right about that.
Totally true. And it's interesting because what you just said is from the company perspective and the field perspective. What we talk to about our companies and field members is that, be very careful. Just the word change can send a certain group of people into orbit. So if we're making an adjustment or enhancement to our policies or to our compensation plan or something, the communication of that to that sales force, particularly starting with the leadership, is the most critical factor. You can't just throw it out there and have your leaders buy into it if they haven't had time to process it. You want the leaders to be prepared to deliver that message and have it be palatable by the rest of the sales force. So we're in total agreement with you with how you communicate.
Nikki, your organization plays a very positive role in that regard. Last week you were kind enough to come and do a training at one of the charitable organizations that our firm is very supportive of. I'm in Portland, Oregon. The Community Warehouse is a furniture bank for Portland, and you did a training at the warehouse. And as you promoted this training, I note that you always tell people, because they're coming from many, many, many companies, and you tell them, we're going to provide you a safe place where you can come and learn, and you can network, and you can talk to folks. But we have an understanding that what you're doing here is to better yourself and not to be here to be recruiting people from other organizations from one to the other. And I really applaud you, and you're very out front with that always.
Thank you. That's the code of honor that everybody understands. You come to one of our events, that's accepted and what we insist upon. But you see, I believe that if everybody in our profession honored that, let people choose where they want to be. They don't want you to come up to them at the bazaar and try and sell the deal. They're there because representing their product. That's going to build our organizations overall for the betterment of all. And I believe that our companies that are aware of educating their people of no cross recruitment and how that works. If you don't want people to cross recruit others to your company, and you are teaching that, you probably will have very few people that will take from your company. And I think that's kind of a foundation of abundance, I guess. So I have another question for you, because I know you've been very actively involved with, the whole situation with Herbalife. How is that affecting direct sellers?
Well, the Direct Selling Association, your organization, everyone has had a moment where they've decided it's really incumbent upon us to really be explaining the industry to the public, because our industry has got caught in the crosshairs of some major hedge funds in the United States who basically make their money by causing stocks to go down or go up. And these are billion-dollar hedge funds, and I think when you're playing with these funds and stocks their valuations go up and down, and we have many companies traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We have Avon, we have Herbalife, we have USANA, we have Nu Skin, we have Primerica, we have Tupperware. When folks start playing at the fringes, putting out rumors or funneling money to basically interest organizations or even to political officials to file complaints with our FTC, all of a sudden to some extent you're messing with the free marketplace for the purpose of basically gain. And I think the industry has been very concerned that's happened and created a volatile environment. And it also has put the industry on the defensive of having to explain the legitimacy of the industry, and in particular, this issue that I mentioned earlier, the issue of personal use, goes very much on the agenda. And those who are attempting to drive down stocks are trying to reverse a policy and the set of decisions recognizing personal use by distributors. And in 2004, the Federal Trade Commission issued a staff advisory opinion indicating that it had no problem with personal use by distributors as being viewed as part of an analysis of a legitimate program. But many in the industry are concerned that the FTC will rethink that policy due to pressure put on it by organizations that are being funded by hedge funds to file complaints, etc. So the industry has legitimate concerns, and it knows that it has a PR battle that it has to continue to wage. And that's also why I think it's not just for monetary reasons, but our industry is very community oriented. And so when you see the Avon walks to eradicate breast cancer, when you see many of the companies in our industry undertake to basically fund very, very important charitable causes, that also helps get the word out for the industry as to what its intent is. But we're in for a bit of a bumpy ride in terms in the near future. But I think I've always looked at it as if you look at a piece of graph paper and you watch the stock market, it goes up, it dips, it goes up. I think in general, though, what you're going to see is the trajectory is rising over time, even though there will be dips.
I would agree with that. And I've got to say this here because it's an important thing. Many times within our own profession, we find fault and speak poorly of other companies. And as a result, our field follows and does the same thing. And I hear this. People that are in network marketing say, oh, those party plan girls, all they do is do parties and nobody's making any money. And, it's not a real business. And then the people in party plan look at the network marketing and say, they don't have a real business. All they do is sell the opportunity and nobody ever sells any product. And so we don't speak highly amongst ourselves. So if it comes from the top within the company, that the company holds up the profession as a whole, not finding fault in other companies, not trying to, compare ourselves to everybody else, being the best that we can be as a company, all in all, it is good for everyone. And that's what we want to see happen.
I agree, and I think a lot of people say that, the problem when the industry has problems is the problem of rogue distributors who are basically saying the wrong things, doing the wrong things, or whatever. But I've always felt that this is very top-driven, and it's driven down, and the message comes from up on top, and the company's in a position to basically send a good message and one that distributors can follow. And I think the responsibility begins at the top myself.
Thank you for that feedback, because I think it does start at the top, and that's the important thing that we want to make sure everybody is clear here. So we, through the DSWA, we have a lot of startup companies. Of course, we've licensed materials to some of the largest companies in the world. We work with some of the great big companies, but we also know that these smaller companies, they don't know what to do, and sometimes they get going, and then they think, oh, you mean we have to have some legal things handled? So what do startups need to be legally compliant and do the right things out of the get-go?
Well, I certainly am not going to launch into an advertisement for us, but now that you mention it, we may as well. We've been there at the beginning of a lot of companies. We were there at the beginning. It was just me across the table from Tom Watanabe of Nikon, or Frank Vandersloot of Melaleuca. I mean, or the folks from Team National or Amazon Herb or whatever. We were there in the beginning. Nobody starts at the top, but what's interesting, people may not understand. They may think, well, you're just a lawyer, but what's interesting is we probably know more about the business than most of our clients, because we've been there and done this a long time. So we become kind of a partner and perhaps one of the most significant business advisors for our clients. But in the beginning, basically, a group like us, when folks get going, they are trying to cover all the right ground as they create all of their agreements and policies. They make sure that they're trademarked from day one. It's very important that they have a trademark that later on is not going to, they're going to have to give up. They have to be dealing with the tax issues. They have to be dealing with regulatory compliance and relationships with their distributors. It's a living, breathing organism that they're building. And so with most of the companies that we represent, not all, we've been with them for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or more. For instance, we brought Nikon to the U.S. from Fukuoka, Japan in 1990. Today we represent them in more than 40 countries. So we've been with folks for a long time, and we kind of feel like we're part of a team. As to what is, quote, the importance of being legally compliant, I think it is important, but it's just one of those factors that's there with also having the ability to have great product, to be able to recruit, have adequate funding. There are many factors that contribute to the success of a company, and we are one arrow in the quiver of that success.
Mm-hmm. And I will add, all that being legally compliant, it is also making sure that your field knows what to do. So training, you can have all the compliance, but if you're not training your people, you'll never get the same success. So I think it all ties together. They're all a quiver, and they all can contribute. You just can't miss any of them if you really want to be successful in the business. So, and I know you've worked with companies that started off very small, as we've had lots of those companies that started in their basement and, or in a little tiny garage or something, and they've gone on to be successful. Just from your perspective, what do you think made them successful?
Sometimes it's being in the right place at the right time, but I think there is no substitute for passion of the owners of a business about their business and about their product. I always say they should have a product or service that should be in search of an opportunity and not an opportunity in search of a product. And then they surround themselves. That passion is contagious. And the best distributors in the business, my experience, are not necessarily seasoned folks who basically have been around forever. I think some of the best distributors are the people who basically are, I guess, what I'd call virgins. They're passionate about something, and so I would say that folks ask, why do people join companies, and it's always a relationship thing, and it always relates to the passion of the owner, the passion of the vision, the belief in the product. And often other things that even transcend the business. So, and then obviously you have to have some luck along the way.
Yeah, and the willingness to stay with it, because it isn't easy to build something from nothing, and you do hit walls, and you do have people that tell you it's not possible, and you have people come and go, all those things, but it's really staying the course with a strategy to succeed. And I believe doing the right things by the people. I think any company that has been successful in this world has cared about the people and shown respect to them, and that's a big factor. If you go count back and look at the companies that we worked with companies when they were in their basements, and we know what it took, and we know how hard it was along the way. But guess what? They kept doing what was right. They did the right things by the people, and they stood strong on their rules, their policies, procedures, and they didn't have favorites.
And I think you need to find folks. You need to be out finding folks that are a match for you. We're all not a match for one another, but we are. There's a match there. I have a daughter who is a mental health therapist, and she loves to do things. When she used to come home from college, I used to, first place we would go would be to Michael's, where she would buy beads and scrapbooking materials, and I have no end of Starbucks cups with family pictures and placemats and you name it. And one day I was at a meeting and I was talking to Cheryl Lytle. I don't know if you know Cheryl, Creative Memories. And I said, Cheryl, tell me, explain I don't get it because I'm the guy sitting in the corner there at Michael's while my daughter's out buying all this stuff, which is what guys do. Mm-hmm. And she said, I said, explain to me the passion my daughter has for this. And Cheryl said to me, Jeff, I know your daughter. And I said, you know my daughter? She says, well, I know 300,000 people just like your daughter. Because in a country that has 300 million people, there always are 300,000 people who are passionate about something. I don't care whether it's jewelry or quilting or bowling or bass fishing. And your goal, I think, as a direct selling company, if you really would like to last, and it isn't just about the opportunity, is to find those 300,000 people.
Beautiful, beautiful way to wrap this up. What I'd like to do is ask so that our listeners know, what services do you offer with your company, and how can people get in touch with you personally if they have a question or want to know more?
Well, Nikki, our firm, we limit our practice to only representing direct selling companies. I write a tremendous amount of books, articles, and things at our website at mlmlegal.com for everyone, for distributors, and I lecture a lot to the distributor community as well, but we only represent companies. We just made that as a policy decision. So we're involved in basically helping companies to start up. I'd say during the last 18 months, for example, 2 companies that are having rather astounding success that we've just started are Nerium International and South Hill Design, for instance. But we're very involved in that startup phase with companies, and we're very involved basically as they grow to be more mature companies at the other end of the spectrum. They may be very large, and so we are the advisor to the legal departments for Avon and for Herbalife, etc., companies that we didn't start to begin with. But they can reach us by basically going to our website, www.mlmlegal.com. There'll be forms if they want to find out more information, all the information if they would like, to call our office, which is 503-226-6600, and we're very happy to talk with them. As I say, we turn out tremendous amount of material that we hope distributors really enjoy, but the likelihood is remote that we're going to be having active conversations or representing distributors. We represent startup companies, emerging companies, and established companies, but we have a major commitment to the health of the entire direct selling industry.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for your time today, for your wisdom. We know that you have so much more that you could share, but this is a good start for people to understand where you're coming from and what your firm does. And we are honored to have you be a part of the Direct Selling Women's Alliance and also just being a part of this profession as a whole. So thank you, everyone. Be sure to reach out to Jeff if you have questions. This is a service of DSWA to support you, the company owners, in growing your business and growing it with an understanding of what will work best for your distributors also, how to create that win-win-win-win. Thanks again, everyone, and have a blessed day.